7/16 ID2 passes. Oh, hey there YouTube, AJ here. Just doing some reading here in the very spacious back seat of my 27 Ford Model T Touring hot rod. And what I'm reading is How to Build a Traditional Ford Hot Rod by Mike Bishop and Vern Tardell. And this book is considered to be the Bible for building an early AV8 Roadster. Now, just because this book is considered to be the Bible doesn't mean it's always right, and doesn't mean it's the only way to do something. And in fact, I've actually found several errors in this book, be they actual errors or misprints, whatever. There are things that can lead you astray in here. And one of them is how they tell you to do your upper rear shock mount. Now, the strategy is right, it makes sense to me, but the details are a little wrong. Let me show you what I'm talking about. What you're looking at here is the rearmost cross member in my Model A frame. And down there, as you can see, is the differential. Now down there on the wheel is the lower shock mount. Those came off like a 47-48 Ford passenger car. Now the shock connects down here and comes up to a point in this area. And what the Bishop Tardell book tells you to do is to put in a piece of tubing here through the face of this cross member all the way back to the back side of it, and weld that tubing in, and then tap that tubing in that sticks out in this area for a generic shock mount to go in here, and that way you can put your upper shock mount right there. Specifically what it tells you to do, it says, and I quote, "A 7/16 inch ID tube passes through the rear wall of the rear cross member and is welded to both the front and rear walls for added strength. The tube is threaded 7/16 inches NF, National Fine Thread, to accept a standard screw-in shock absorber mounting stud, such as this." Now the problem with that is this mounting stud that is supposed to thread into that 7/16 tapped tubing is actually 1/2 20 thread, which is, half inch, 20 threads per inch, fine thread, etc. So that's not going to work. Now the misprint could be that they meant to say tap the 7/16 inch ID tubing to 1/2 20, and that would make sense. So I'm guessing that's what it's supposed to be. However, that's not quite true either, because the 7/16 is actually too big of a hole to officially to tap for this. It may be a little loose, it may pull the threads, it may work, I don't know. It's supposed to be 29/64. We're splitting hairs there, but sometimes those hairs make a difference when you're tapping something, especially when you don't want it to work loose or just strip out. Now, I'm not pointing out the error in this book just to be a know-it-all or to say I'm smarter than these guys, because I'm definitely probably not. The reason I'm pointing this out is I know a lot of people will pick up this book, and quite honestly, if you're wanting to build an early Ford hot rod, this is a great book to read and learn what you're getting yourself into. It's obviously not a step-by-step instruction manual. I would just consider it a really good guide on how to build a hot rod. Now, back to why I'm pointing out the error. There are errors in here, and if you're using this book, don't forget to use your own mind and your own measurements and confirm things before you go blindly following dimensions and things that are in this book, because there are some mistakes or misprints or errors, whatever you want to call them. Just a friendly word of advice / warning, okay? So we are going to proceed with this plan. We're going to make it a little different. I'm going to use tubing with a heavier wall and a smaller inner diameter and drill it out to the 29/64 I need to tap for my shock mount. Now, I'm not going to use this universal mount that I use for my lower front mounts. I could, but I'd rather use these old Ford F1. I think these are the upper mounts for the rear shocks on a Ford F1. Going to do it for a couple of reasons. One, this piece here from this surface where it's going to mount made up to the tubing to this flange where the shock sits is actually taller, deeper, whatever, than the one on this mount. Also, this mount has a longer bolt to go in Now I'm going to make myself more work by using this versus just tapping a shorter distance into the pipe. I'm going to have to actually step drill my tubing in order to have the narrowest part to tap down at the end, a little wider opening so this part will slide in and out. And to be honest, I don't know if the tooling I have will allow me to even do that. So it's going to be an experiment to try to use this mount. If I can't do it, I will revert to using this one and we'll just move on from there. But I am going to try to use the old F1 original mount first, just to put another older piece of steel onto my hot rod versus new steel. And plus, I think it'll be pretty cool if I can accomplish what I'm trying to do. So let's take our mount and step out to the workbench and see if I can drill a piece of tubing to accept this short threaded part and this long non-threaded part. See if I can make it work. All right, so in my vise here, I have a piece of 3/4 inch outer diameter tubing, which with a really heavy wall and a small center hole. It's a little bit over 3/8 center hole, giving me plenty of meat to tack to and weld to. I'm going to put a washer in between these two. I figure that'll give me a way of knowing if the mount is loosening up. So what I have to do is, if you lay this stud that I need to put inside here on top of it, you can see I need to drill the entire depth to this thread depth here that this blue tape represents. So I need to get the entire hole down to 29/64 so I can tap this part here. Then from this end into where the threads begin to start, I'll need to drill that out a little bigger to accept this part of the shaft that is not threaded. So I don't know if a 1/2 inch will do it, maybe whatever the next size is up from that, but we'll start with a 1/2 inch to see if it slides in, and if it doesn't, we'll drill it a little bit bigger. So that's the theory. Once we get the holes drilled like that, then we can hopefully go in with my tap and tap this section to the 1/2 inch 20 that this will thread into. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and throw another piece of tape on here and mark where my threads are going to start, because I'm going to have to check these depths off them to make sure I get them right. So down to here, we want to drill it to 29/64, probably a little past that. We will be cutting this off like at 4.5, 5 inches, somewhere in there afterwards, and we'll leave the full width of the wall down on the bottom end of it. So anyway, we'll drill down into here to the 29/64 to where that we can tap, and then so we can tap from this section to this section, and this section here in front of the line to the end, we will drill that to 1/2 inch and see if that'll go in and thread. One thing I am worried about is being able to drill all the way in. Like this first drill bit is not 29/64, it's one size before it. So I was going to try to go take it out in small steps. I am worried about getting so far in and then having too much meat inside the tubing and it binding up. So what I might have to do is drill as far in as I can with the smallest bit, then switch to the next size up bit, drill into that, then take the smaller bit and drill further in, now that it won't be binding back here. That makes sense to me. We'll see if it all works out like that. I'm going to throw you in time-lapse mode. Hopefully this will work. One thing that I forgot to mention was that I also marked my drill bits to the depth with tape here, so I wouldn't drill in too far. That said, step one went pretty well. I did have to change the battery in my drill, but with the smallest bit, I was able to go in all the way without it binding. So that means that maybe this is going to work for me. So anyway, that's the first step done. Next step, we're going to take our 29/64 bit and we're going to do it again. We're going to try to get it all the way into there, and hopefully that'll work. Okay, well, step two went well too. I was able to take the 29/64 bit and get it all the way in there. So now our next step is to drill from the end down to this blue tape here with the 1/2 inch, and we've got that marked on our bit. So let's hope our luck keeps holding out. Okay, I kind of messed up, but not like super bad. The bit that I thought was 29/64 is actually 25/64. So I don't have it large enough yet in my tap zone. So I'm going to go to 29/64 and see if I can get that in there. And, you know, things happen, right? But we're going to mark our drill bit first. Make sure we're in there deep enough. Could have been worse. I could have drilled it to a too big of a size, which, you know, we don't want to do that. That would have been way worse to do. Not that we don't have enough tubing here. We could have remade it, but why do it twice? So anyway, now we're going to go to 29/64 and see if we can get down to where we need it to be. Well, I screwed up. I've drilled it out to 1/2 inch all the way to right there. So that's our current 1/2 inch depth. However, if you notice, our thread started back here. So now from here to here, it's too big for my threads. I can't tap that because the hole's too big. So now we've got to, that's where our thread line's going to be. This is the end of our threads. So we're going to put diagonals in there to simulate threads. Okay, that means basically where this tape is, that's where we need to end the pipe now. So I've got to cut that off and start over. I don't have to start completely over because, you know, I don't have to drill all this hole here, but I do have to re-drill part of that hole. So if we do that, oh, right there. This line's going to mess me up. X out that line. Out of ink. So cut it there. Drill 1/2 inch to here, which is already is, and I need to open it up just a little bit more. I got to open it up to 9/16, I think, for the shaft to slide. So we'll do that afterwards. So cut it off at the tape. And then we'll have to drill this out to 29/64 from this line to this line. Oh well, definitely not the first mistake. Most likely isn't the last. If it's the last, I'd be extremely grateful, but I doubt it is. Okay, so we fixed my mistake. We are drilled 9/16 up to this line, 29/64 back to here. That passed our thread mark. Now it's time to see if we can tap it. We'll use generous amounts of cutting fluid and hope we can do this. So far, it feels like it's cutting. Should have put a mark on my tap so I knew how far in I needed to be. Oh! Thought my tap broke. It did not, just the handle came off. Whew. Before we take it out, let's put some tape on it, mark where it's at. Let's be smart here. Although everything's got cutting fluid on it now, it's hard to get tape to stick to anything. But if we're lucky, ow, got metal on my thumb. Ow. Ah, there we go, ouch. Well, that's not going to stick very well, oh well. I don't know if that was in there far enough. And survey says, oh, it's going to be so close. I don't think it's in there far enough. We got to get it in there a little further. Whoop. That's the wrong direction. Head on this thing's twisted. Oh, that's good. It seemed to go in a lot further that time. Looks like we went in about a 1/4 inch further that time, so hopefully that's enough. Well, it's definitely threading. That's good. I'm gonna throw another nut on here. Try to make like a stud. Once we tighten these 2 nuts together, we should be able to use it to tighten it to the stud in. Alright. Now we should be able to use this to run our stud in. Alright, we got to get our tap in at least another 1/8 plus. Oh, I was afraid of that. I don't think I have it drilled in far enough for the tap to go in any further. No, I don't want to risk breaking my tap. Shoot. Right now I got to risk screwing up my threads. So I got to get at least an 1/8 inch past wherever this goes in easy. I need to get another 1/8 inch or more. All right, hopefully that's enough. Are we having fun yet, folks? All right, come on, baby. Oh yeah, I think we got plenty now. Now let's see if our stud will go in there. So far, so good. Don't you tell me. What? It's at the same place it was before. That can't be. Is it bottoming out? I bet you at my transition. No, it can't be. Shit. What is going on? And I say to myself, what's going on? So something else has to be awry, because it's bottoming out at the same spot, and I know I've got more threads in there to go. So what did I do? That means this must be hitting where the threads are starting, which means I need to take the bigger hole in like an 1/8 more inch. We're gonna take this in baby steps. Make sure we didn't mess up our threads. Now, if my theory is correct, then this should go in further this time. And it did go in a little further, so we gotta do that again, maybe 2 more times. Come on, baby. Make this the last time. Daddy getting tired. All right, success, finally. So, kind of a pain in the ass. I screwed up, and yeah, it'd be so much easier if I had a lathe, but I don't. So now what we got to do is figure out the length of this. So we need to do is chop that off to that length, and to do that we got to go to the back of the car and figure all that out. However, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to put you folks away, and now I'm going to do this to the other end of this pipe, and I'm not going to take you along for the fun of that. Hopefully it'll go smoother and faster than it went this time, because I know where I made mistakes, and hopefully I won't make the same mistakes, and hopefully I'll get it all done the first time this time. So anyway, I'll go work on that, and then I'll meet you at the back of the car. All right, so I got the other end threaded and installed. Looks pretty good. The second time went a lot better, obviously, since I knew what I was doing this time. But now I got a new Ninja Turtle weapon. Ha! Shocker. All right, maybe not the shocker. Anyway, so I got this. Now the idea is it's obviously not going to stay this long. That's not what's happening here. I just threaded each end because it just made it easier to hold the piece of steel while I was working on it. Now what I need to do is figure out how long I need it to be and cut it off. And to do that, we need to go under the car. So down here under the car, Attached to our brake drum and our axle, we have our lower shock mount, which came off like a 4748 Ford passenger car. And then we need to go up here, up there to the frame, attach our upper shock mounts. Now to do that, our shock will need to sit something like this. Now, according to the internet gods, your shock should be at no more than a 30-degree angle, and that would be 30 degrees that way. Well, I have some issues with body fitment here, so I know roughly where I'm going to be, up here. All right, let's look at this Rube Goldberg contraption I got going on here. So I opened my doors up on both sides to allow the back half of my body to fold up. Fortunately, I have not welded it together down there yet, so the accordion feature comes in handy. We have our floor jack with a shim board and a lever board and another shim board, coffee holder. We have a jack stand under our axle. And now we have a little more room to navigate down here. Now, of course, because of the spring and all this, with everything at weird angles, I can't do any measurements here, but I can figure out where I need to drill my hole here and how long I need to make my piece. So let's get back to that. So we know we're going to be roughly in this area here. So hold this square. All right, 1 inch. All right. So if we measure the top of this outside to outside, we're at 3 1/8. So if we cut it at 3 1/8 plus an inch, 4 1/8, we should be a little long. So you know what we're going to do just to be safe? We're going to cut it at 4 1/4, and we can trim it once we actually get our hole in and slide it in to test fit it. So I cut these down off the end of the long piece of tubing. I actually did cut them to 4 1/2 to give myself a little extra bit of screw up room, since I got to trim them anyway. So yep, I got plenty of sticking out. So now our next step is to figure out where we're going to drill our hole here. I was going to try to locate the mount like right here, but I think instead I'm going to try to locate it right over top of this rivet here, because if I do that, my angle is 30 degrees. I did some re-measuring, and my shock angle is 30 degrees, which is supposed to be your maximum, which is about the max that I can hope for at this point. So I am going to try to drill my hole straight out from the face of that rivet on both sides. The center of that rivet is 1 1/8 inch down.
I got to measure from the curve. Shoot. Cannot hold this in there straight. Problem is, none of this cross members square. Where's my angle flag? Let's try. Oh, come on! Can't. Bubbles in the way. Shit.
Well, let's see if that looks like it's going to work. I think we're there. X marks the spot. Well, I got through, but I also broke off my bit. And I think that was my last 1/8 inch bit to top it off. Oh, come on. Come on, break free. It's starting to wiggle. Come on. Come on out of there, baby. Well, it broke. Didn't break free, but it broke. Oh. Hell's bells. And it broke again. This is just freaking awesome. Alright, let's see if we can punch it out with this broken spring punch. Well, the spring punch just disappeared. Come on. How does this spring punch keep jumping up into the car someplace and not falling back out? There was no floors in this thing. somehow the spring punch, every time it jumps out, goes flying up into the car. And even though the car has no floorboards, it somehow managed to catch itself and not fall out on and land on some crappy little rusted piece of subframe. Oh, there's just no good angle to hit it. Ah, I think I got it. Hey, I got it. All right. Woo! All right, can we see the rivet? All right, looks like we're right on our rivet too. So our next step is, before we go any further, we want to mark this hole in relation to those up there, and hopefully it'll make marking our other side easier. Okay, today's cardboard sponsor is Honey Nut Cheerios. Delicious and good for your heart. So all I'm doing here is cutting me a piece that will fit on the angle, and that will fit over both sets of holes. Cut off about that much of it. Cut an angle to match over top of this. So I'm going to hold it square on there. Actually, I may have just found a better way to locate this. Alright, so in this top piece I'm going to put a notch, because there's a piece of frame rail I can slide this up against. So this may make it even better. So if we slide this in here, up against that, hold it in place. There we go. Alright, got our hole there. Now, gonna find our holes on top. There's one. Come on, where's that hole? There it is. Alright. Okay, so now we have a template with our holes, our big holes on the top of the rail marked, a corner that goes into the piece of frame rail on the top, and then our hole that we need to mark on the other side. So theoretically, we reverse this like that, we can make our exact same hole on the other side. So we put this in here, we are in that hole, we are in the other top hole, we should be good to go right there. All right, we have a mark, we have a center punch. How do we do? Let's see how it lines up with our rivet. Looks good that way. All right, we look like we're there. Now, let's get a drill bit and see if we can do it without breaking it. Well, we got our hole. Yep, looks like we're dead on it again, so that's good. So we need to drill these out to 3/4 inch plus so the tubing will slip in. All right, to drill these out, I'm going to try using my Harbor Freight step bits. Throw some cutting fluid on here. Well, the Harbor Freight bits made pretty good quick work out of this. So of course the battery died, but I went ahead and cut these off to length. I had to cut off 1/4 inch, and if you remember, I left myself 1/4 inch of slop. I had to cut it right back off. So anyway, that done. I went ahead and grinded my bevel on the ends of these for welding. I also had to drill out the ends of the tube a little bit because the inside diameter of the tubing was not big enough to go over the head of the rivet. So I had to take a drill bit and ream out the ends of them, just basically to create a concave for the rivet to sit in. I also wire wheeled the outside of the frame, and I wire brushed the inside of the frame as best I can in preparation for welding. And now I think we are all set to slide these in. And they're sitting right over top of the rivet. So we got everything in place. Next thing we need to do is tack them in. And I'm only going to be able to tack them from this outside portion until I get the body off and get the frame off where I can weld inside here. Before I do that though, I am going to wrap it up in some tape to protect it from slag. I don't want to get any slag into the threads of my shock mount especially. Plus the tape will give me something fun to catch on fire when I'm welding. Well, I got the upper shock mounts mounted. However, I had these really cool Tiger Ride vintage shocks that I wanted to use on the rear. They are really cool. They're orange. They got a Tiger sticker on them. I was really wanting to use these. However, I can't. When they're fully compressed, they're 11.5 inches eye to eye. Center of the eye to the center of the eye. Which happens to be the exact same distance on this side. 11.5 inches center to center. And eventually this one will be too, but right now it's about 1 inch longer because I still have to shorten this mount. Now these shocks here I stole off the front end, and unfortunately they're also 11.5 center to center. So I'm gonna have to find some smaller shocks for the rear, but I'm gonna go ahead and bolt these on just temporarily, just to show you what it looks like with shocks on here. First thing I see on this side, I'm definitely gonna have to clearance the body more, because I'm hitting right here on something on the inner subframe. So that inner subframe is gonna have to be clearanced more. This is probably why everybody uses shocks without the upper shroud, which I hate that. I like the shroud. I like the look of the whole shroud. So we have our shock mount. Our upper shock mount is welded to the frame up here. Our shock comes down at about a 30-degree angle. Same thing on this side. Welded up here, 30-degree angle this way. This tube mount is hitting the inner subframe right here. That's got to be clearanced. I will probably need to go to a shroudless shock, which I didn't want to. I don't like them personally. I like the look of the shroud. I will try to find a smaller shock with a shroud and maybe have to modify them a little more. If I can find one, I'll probably go through the effort of modifying this wheel well and everything to fit it. So I will chalk this one up as a full win. My mounts are in, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm disappointed I can't use my Tiger Ride shocks. Was looking forward to seeing those on here. You know, but it is what it is. Hold on. Did you think I was just going to be that easily defeated? No. I got online, did some research. I found some shocks that would fit and were available on Amazon. Got them in a day. We're back at it here. So I got the car back up on jack stands. We're going to cut this subframe so there's more room for that shock body to move in there. We're going to get underneath it, and we're going to weld some of the tube inside the frame rail to make sure those are good and sturdy welds until I can flip the frame over and weld it completely. And yeah, we're going to get some shocks on this thing. Let's go. Alright, who said I was defeated? I'm not defeated. I have shocks. Alright, so shocks are mounted. Not finished welded yet, but real good sturdy heavy tack welds that aren't going to go anywhere until I can take this frame. When I blow it apart, I'll flip it over and weld the bottom as well as I can and get it a lot stronger. But for now, I'm rolling it in now, the garage and stuff. It's going to be just fine. Alright, so there's the passenger side. Upper and lower, and then driver's side, upper and lower. Looks pretty good, actually. I'm liking everything I got going on down here so far. Okay, now that it's down on the ground, this is what it looks like. I think we're in good shape there. I did do a before and after bounce test. Before bounce test, I was able to easily bottom out the suspension, and I assume that was my spring hitting the axle that I heard, or it sounded like it. I can't really tell. I'll have to do a little more checking on that. I may in the end need to add another leaf back to the spring pack to raise it up just a little bit, strengthen it up a little bit. Other than that, everything seems to work really good. It should be fine for what I needed to do. Hopefully these shocks will ride halfway decent. I mean, it's a hot rod. I'm not building a luxury car here, so I'm not expecting it to float like a cloud down the road. I drive a Jeep anyway, so, you know, it's not like I'm used to living in the lap of luxury when it comes to car rides. So now we can actually wrap up the video. I want to thank everybody for watching. Appreciate your views, likes, comments, and especially subscribing. That really helps the channel. If you can subscribe, throw me a sub my way. Really would appreciate that. Next, I think I'm going to mount my pedal assembly. You know, when you mount your pedals or your steering, that's kind of, in one of these cars, that's kind of a chicken and an egg scenario, because they're both guaranteed to be in the way of one another or close to it. I'm choosing to mount my pedals first because, one, I'm still kind of leery about mounting my steering for some reason. I'm not happy with that. Plus, my body is not 100% in its final position. And my pedal assemblies, I have a starting point. My clutch pivot tube is already kind of dictating the general area where my pedals are going to go. I might have to fine tune and maybe cut and re-weld some of my linkages, but I'm going to start off my clutch pivot tube, get that mounted, and then figure out where my pedals want to mount naturally from that. And hopefully that'll be in a position that'll work. If it's not, then we'll just kind of figure out from there what we're going to have to change in order to make that work. So until then, later YouTube. Before. After.